My husband's best friend showed up to his funeral in a wedding dress claiming to be his real wife and tried to steal his ashes. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'm going to share with you the most bizarre, heartbreaking, and frankly terrifying experience of my life. It's a story about grief, delusion, and how one woman's obsession nearly destroyed what should have been a sacred farewell to the love of my life. My name is Rebecca. I'm 35 years old, and this is the story of how my husband's so-called best friend tried to hijack his funeral and steal his memory from me. Let me start at the beginning. My husband Michael and I were married for 7 beautiful years. We met in college, fell in love over late-night study sessions and terrible cafeteria coffee, and built what I thought was a perfect life together. Michael was an engineer, brilliant and kind, with this infectious laugh that could light up any room. He was my best friend, my soulmate, my everything. Michael had always been a social person. He had friends from high school, college, work. He was one of those people who just naturally drew others to him. Among his friends was a woman named Jessica, who he'd known since their freshman year of college. She was part of his extended friend group, someone who showed up to birthday parties and group dinners. But honestly, I never thought much about her. Jessica was intense. That's the word I'd use. She had this way of making every conversation about herself, of inserting herself into situations where she didn't quite belong. But Michael, being the kind person he was, always included her. "She's just lonely," he'd say when I'd mentioned that she seemed a bit much. "She doesn't have many close friends." Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Jessica would always position herself next to Michael in group photos, how she'd text him about random things at odd hours, the way she'd bring up inside jokes that only the two of them seemed to understand. But at the time, I trusted my husband completely, and I thought I was just being paranoid or jealous. Michael was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 18 months ago. It was aggressive, and despite the best medical care, the treatments, the hope we clung to, he passed away on a Tuesday morning in March, holding my hand. I was devastated. 7 years of marriage, and suddenly I was alone. The funeral arrangements felt impossible to navigate through my grief, but Michael's family and our close friends rallied around me. We planned a beautiful service to celebrate his life, something he would have loved, with his favorite music, photos from our travels together, and all the people who truly knew and loved him. I sent out the funeral information to Michael's contact list, including Jessica. I expected her to attend, of course. They had been friends for over a decade. What I didn't expect was what happened next. The morning of the funeral, I was getting ready at home with my sister Sarah helping me. I was wearing a simple black dress, something Michael had complimented me on before. I was barely holding it together, but I was determined to give him the send-off he deserved. My phone rang around 8 a.m. It was my mother-in-law, Michael's mom, Patricia, and she sounded frantic. "Rebecca, honey, I need to ask you something, and I want you to stay calm." My heart immediately started racing. "What's wrong? Is everything okay with the arrangements?" Did you, did you know that Michael was married to someone else?" I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "What are you talking about?" "There's a woman here at the funeral home. She's wearing a wedding dress, Rebecca. She's telling everyone that she was Michael's real wife, that you were just some kind of mistress or something." I couldn't breathe. "Who is it?" "She says her name is Jessica. She has some kind of documentation. She's demanding to speak to the funeral director about changing the arrangements. She wants to be the one to give the eulogy." I dropped the phone. Sarah caught it and continued the conversation while I sat on my bed, trying to process what I just heard. Jessica. Michael's friend Jessica was at his funeral in a wedding dress, claiming to be his wife. We rushed to the funeral home, and nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Jessica was standing in the lobby, and she was indeed wearing a full wedding dress. white satin, lace sleeves, the works. She had a bouquet of white roses and what appeared to be a stack of papers in her hand. When she saw me, her face lit up with this bizarre, almost sympathetic smile. "Oh, Rebecca," she said, walking toward me with her arms open like she was going to hug me. "I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I know this must be confusing for you." I stepped back, Sarah moving protectively in front of me. "Jessica, what are you doing? What is this?" "I'm here for my husband's funeral," she said simply, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "I know Michael didn't want to hurt you, so he kept our marriage secret, but I can't let him be buried under false pretenses." "Your marriage?" I was barely able to speak. "Jessica, I was married to Michael. We were married for 7 years." She shook her head sadly, like I was a confused child. "No, sweetie. You were his girlfriend. A long-term relationship, yes. But Michael and I have been spiritually married for years. We had a ceremony, just the two of us and God. These papers prove it." She held up what looked like some kind of certificate, but when I got closer, I could see it was clearly homemade, printed on regular paper with decorative borders that looked like they came from a craft store. The funeral director, Mr. Henderson, approached us looking extremely uncomfortable. "Mrs. Williams, I'm going to need to see some official documentation if there are questions about the arrangements." I pulled out my marriage certificate, the real one, filed with the state, signed by a licensed officiant. "This is our marriage certificate. I am Michael's wife. I am his legal next of kin." Jessica looked at my certificate and laughed. "Oh, that's just a piece of paper. What Michael and I had was real love, a real spiritual connection. He told me he only married you because he felt sorry for you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even in my grief, even knowing this woman was clearly having some kind of mental breakdown, the cruelty of that statement took my breath away. "Jessica," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I don't know what's happening here, but you need to leave. This is Michael's funeral, and you're disrupting it." "I'm not disrupting anything," she said, her voice getting higher and more agitated. "I'm his widow. I should be the one making the arrangements. I should be the one receiving condolences. You've been living a lie, Rebecca." By this point, other family members and friends had started arriving and were witnessing this bizarre scene. Michael's brother Tom stepped forward. "Jessica, I've known you for years. You were Michael's friend. But he was married to Rebecca. We all know that. You were at their wedding." Jessica's composure started to crack. "You don't understand. The wedding you saw was fake. Michael told me he had to go through with it to keep up appearances, but it wasn't real. Our love was real." "Where's your marriage certificate then?" Tom asked. "A real one, filed with the state?" Jessica clutched her fake certificate closer to her chest. "We didn't need the government's approval. Our bond was deeper than that." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "I'm going to need everyone to calm down. Mrs. Williams, you have the legal documentation. The service will proceed as planned. Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to either change clothes or leave the premises." That's when Jessica completely lost it. "No!" she screamed. "You can't do this. Michael loved me. He chose me. Rebecca, you know this is true. Deep down, you know he was never really happy with you." She started pulling things out of a bag I hadn't noticed before. Printed emails, photos, what looked like a diary. "Look at these. Look at our conversations. Look at how he talked to me." I glanced at the printed emails she was waving around. They appeared to be routine, friendly exchanges. "Hey, how was your weekend?" "Thanks for the birthday wishes." Normal stuff you'd say to any friend, but Jessica had highlighted certain words and phrases and written notes in the margins, interpreting innocent friendliness as declarations of love. The photos were even more disturbing. They were clearly pictures from group gatherings, but Jessica had cropped everyone else out, so it looked like just her and Michael. Some of them appeared to be digitally altered to make them look more intimate. Her leaning closer to him, his arm around her in a way that I was certain hadn't happened in the original photos. Jessica, I said, and I surprised myself by how calm my voice sounded. Michael never said any of those things to you. These are just normal friend conversations, and you've manipulated these photos. I haven't manipulated anything, she shrieked. This is the truth. Michael was going to leave you for me. He told me so. When? I asked. When did he tell you this? All the time, in our secret conversations, in our private moments. What private moments, Jessica? When were you and Michael ever alone together? She faltered for a moment, then said, At the coffee shop. We'd meet at the coffee shop every Tuesday. I knew immediately what she was talking about. Michael did go to a coffee shop every Tuesday. It was near his office, and he'd work there in the afternoon sometimes when he needed a change of scenery. I'd even met him there a few times. Jessica, that's not secret meetings. That's just where he liked to work. It's a public coffee shop. He was waiting for me there, she insisted. He knew I'd find him. The delusion was complete. In Jessica's mind, Michael's routine of working at a coffee shop had become secret romantic rendezvous. His friendly responses to her texts had become love letters. Group photos had become intimate couple portraits. Security arrived at that point. Mr. Henderson had quietly called them when Jessica started screaming. She was still clutching her fake marriage certificate and her bag of evidence. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, one of the security guards said gently. No, I'm not leaving my husband's funeral. Rebecca, tell them Michael loved me. I looked at this woman, this person who had somehow constructed an entire fantasy relationship with my husband, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not just anger, but pity. Jessica, I said quietly, Michael cared about you as a friend, but he was never in love with you. He was in love with me. We built a life together. We were happy together. And now he's gone, and I need to say goodbye to him. Please don't take that away from me. For just a moment, her face crumpled, and I saw a glimpse of the pain underneath all the delusion. But then the fantasy reasserted itself. You're lying, she whispered. You're all lying. Michael, tell them the truth. She was looking at Michael's casket as if she expected him to sit up and confirm her story. Security gently but firmly escorted her out. As they led her away, she was still shouting, I'm his real wife. I'm his real wife. The service should be for me. The funeral proceeded, but the damage was done. What should have been a peaceful celebration of Michael's life had been turned into a circus. I could see the confusion and discomfort on people's faces. Some of our friends were whispering, wondering if there was any truth to what Jessica had said. During my eulogy, I addressed it directly. Some of you may be confused by what happened earlier. I want to be clear. Michael and I were happily married for 7 years. We loved each other deeply, and he was never unfaithful to me. Sometimes, when we're grieving, we can convince ourselves of things that aren't true. I hope that person gets the help they need. After the service, we went to the cemetery for the burial. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. As we were getting ready to lower Michael's casket into the ground, a commotion broke out near the parking area. Jessica was back, and this time she'd brought reinforcements. 2 people I didn't recognize, who were apparently her siblings. She was still in the wedding dress, but now it was dirty and wrinkled. She was carrying a different bag, and she was marching toward us with determination. Stop, she yelled. You can't bury him. I have rights. Her siblings looked embarrassed, but were trying to support her. One of them, a woman who looked like an older version of Jessica, approached me. I'm so sorry, she said quietly. Jessica has been struggling since she heard about Michael's death. We've been trying to get her help, but she won't listen to us. She's convinced that she and Michael were in a relationship. Has she been like this before? I asked. The woman, who introduced herself as Jessica's sister Lynn, nodded grimly. She's had obsessions before. A professor in college, a coworker at her last job, but never this intense, never this elaborate. Meanwhile, Jessica was trying to get to the grave site, insisting that she needed to say goodbye to her husband properly. She was pulling things out of her bag, more fake documents, what looked like wedding rings, and most disturbing of all, a small urn. I brought his real ashes, she announced to the horrified crowd. The ones in that casket are fake. These are Michael's real ashes from our spiritual cremation ceremony. I stared at the urn in her hands, trying to process what she was saying. Jessica, what is that? Michael's ashes, she repeated. From when we spiritually joined in death, like we were spiritually joined in life. Lynn gasped. Jessica, where did you get that? I I made it for the ceremony. It slowly dawned on me what was in that urn. It wasn't Michael's ashes. It couldn't be, since Michael was right there in the casket. It was something Jessica had created as part of her elaborate fantasy. Jessica, I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice was. That's not Michael. Michael is here, in this casket. What you have there is something else. She clutched the urn closer to her chest. No, you don't understand. This is from our spiritual union, when two souls become one. The funeral director, who had followed us to the cemetery, stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to step back from the grave site. I'm his wife, Jessica screamed again. I have rights. I should be the one to decide what happens to his body. No, I said, and for the first time that day, I felt angry instead of just confused and sad. You don't have rights. You never had rights. Michael was my husband. He loved me. He chose me. And you're turning his funeral into a freak show with your delusions. Jessica's face twisted with rage and hurt. He didn't choose you. He was trapped. He was going to leave you. When, Jessica? When was he going to leave me? Before or after we renewed our vows last year? Before or after we started talking about having children? Before or after he told me every single day that he loved me? He told me he loved me too. No, he didn't. He might have said he loved you as a friend, but that's not the same thing, and you know it. The fantasy was cracking, and I could see the real pain underneath. This woman had built an entire imaginary relationship to fill some void in her life, and now reality was crashing down around her. Please, she whispered, and suddenly she sounded very young and very lost. Please don't take him away from me too. Jessica, I said more gently, I'm not taking him away from you. He was never yours to begin with, but you can still mourn him as a friend. You can still remember the good times you had as part of his friend group, but you have to let go of this fantasy. She looked at me, then at the casket, then at the urn in her hands. For a moment, I thought she was going to have a breakthrough, that she was going to accept reality. Instead, she hurled the urn at Michael's casket. If I can't have him, no one can, she screamed. Security was on her immediately. Lynn and her other sibling helped restrain her while she sobbed and screamed. The urn had shattered against the casket, spilling its contents, which appeared to be regular crematorium ashes that she'd somehow obtained, probably from a pet crematory or something equally disturbing. Jessica needs help, Lynn said to me as they led her away. Professional help. I'm so sorry this happened. Michael seemed like a wonderful man, and you don't deserve this. The burial continued, but it felt surreal. I kept looking around, expecting Jessica to appear again. The beautiful goodbye I'd planned for my husband had been turned into something out of a nightmare. After everyone left, I stayed at the gravesite alone for a while. I talked to Michael, told him how sorry I was that his funeral had been disrupted, how much I loved him, how much I was going to miss him, and I found myself wondering, had I missed signs of Jessica's obsession? Had Michael noticed anything? Had he been uncomfortable with her attention but been too polite to say anything? I'll never know the answers to those questions, but I've learned to live with that uncertainty. Jessica was eventually hospitalized for a psychiatric evaluation. According to Lynn, who stayed in touch with me, she was diagnosed with erotomania, a delusional disorder where someone believes that another person is in love with them. She'd apparently been crafting this fantasy relationship with Michael for years, interpreting every friendly interaction as romantic interest. The fake marriage certificate, the altered photos, the secret meetings at the coffee shop. It was all part of an elaborate delusion that had gotten progressively worse over time. Michael's death had triggered a complete break from reality. Jessica is getting help now, and I hope she's able to recover. I don't hate her, I pity her. Mental illness is real, and it can make people do things that seem cruel or crazy, but are really just symptoms of their condition. But I also learned something important from this experience. It's okay to protect your own grief. It's okay to set boundaries, even with people who are clearly suffering. Jessica's pain didn't give her the right to hijack my husband's funeral or to try to rewrite the story of our marriage. Michael and I had 7 beautiful years together. We loved each other deeply, completely, and faithfully. No amount of delusion or fake documents can change that truth. If you're dealing with someone who's trying to insert themselves into your grief, who's making your loss about them, remember that you have the right to protect your own healing process. You don't have to accommodate other people's fantasies, even if they're rooted in mental illness. And if you're struggling with obsessive thoughts about someone who doesn't return your feelings, please get help. The fantasy might feel real to you, but it's causing real pain to other people. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been therapeutic to talk about it, and I hope it helps someone else who might be going through something similar. Take care of yourselves, and remember, love is real, but so is delusion. Learn to tell the difference. See you in the next video.